Okay, good evening. This is John Bushka. I just want to talk about where I am right now in with my internet presence and screenplays and books and everything, and what's going on as we come down to the election. Um, and I'll start with just a few images. That's an image of what my internet presence used to look like back in the late '90s. It's just an image of it when you Googled me. And then that's an image of a site that I used to have when I used to have everything populated on HP high productivity publishing and HP Pub um, back in the late '90s and into the early 2000s. And that's my first original book cover back from 1997. And here's one more picture of Market Street in San Francisco to represent the left. And so that's kind of just um, having some images to introduce what I want to talk about. Um, so I just want to go through a few talking points. We face right now in the election a danger from the right. Uh, and we face dangers from extremes on both sides. It seems like normies don't want to have anything to do with politics, and that the people that are running for office, it seems like right now, are belong to cults, whether on the right or on the left. MAGA is a cult, and the far left is a cult, and it's getting very dangerous for for people that have been prosperous as individuals and done well. Because there's so much grievance out there that is posing a lot of danger to all of us. So let me just go through the biggest danger from the right is particularly for not only for LGBT, not only transgender people, but even gay people originally, as we've normally understood it over the years. If you read the Project 2025 document, the definition of pornography would have included discussions of ideological issues like gender identity, but even sexual orientation. In some instances, it might even have applied to adults if you read the document very literally. And the whole idea was that minors should not be exposed to any idea of sexual nonconformity um, because doing so could cause more fragile minors to lose interest in growing up to marry and have children, and that's something, a belief that you particularly find overseas, and that's particularly true in Russia and Hungary right now. Russia is actually making it a law to against the against the law to disseminate propaganda for the child-free lifestyle. That's the latest thing Putin is about. If a country thinks that the world is a zero-sum game and there's not enough around, there's going to be not going to be enough around for everybody, you're going you're going to want your own people to be stronger personally than the people in other cultures. You don't want them influenced by other cultures. So that seems to be what's going on. And some of the stuff that's going on in the far right, Trump has disavowed it, and we're not quite sure where Vance is. We don't really know exactly what would happen if Trump won. Um, many people say that it would just be the trans issue, but it could spill over and be everything. So that's one big concern I have. One of the things I have to give the right credit for is the basic idea that if you do grow up and are able to marry heterosexually and have children, your own children, that increases your personal agency if you do everything right. But of course, a lot comes with it, like a permanent, intimate relationship you're spending your life with someone else. it's not an idea that you can teach like everything else when people are growing up. But I remember when I was my last year in high school that there were people that told me that they expected to do this and that I should expect to do it too, and that didn't quite happen. So then the next thing is the danger from the far left. And one of the reasons why a lot of people are not too afraid of Trump's breaking the law and January 6th. And by the way, there's been some recent film. There's a recent film on Fight Like Hell by Ford Fisher that shows that some of the stuff when January 6th actually happened outside of Trump's control, which is kind of interesting. There's been some material like that recently. So even the perspective of January 6th is changing a little bit. But the danger from the far left, which is many people like myself are very concerned about, is the idea of individual accountability is replaced by simply the accountability of the group that you belong to, whether it was an oppressor group, or oppressed. And the whole idea of oppressor versus oppressed is what matters. And I lost my mouse there for a second. So in the ideology of the far left, there's special protection of people in marginalized groups or protected classes, even from ordinary factual speech. And that's particularly been true of the gender issue. And there's institutional capture, and then there's cancel culture, where people are afraid of losing their jobs if they speak out against it, particularly in academia, but even in the corporate world. Sometimes there's coercive training and so forth, DEI training. I never had that because my formal retirement was the end of 2001, and I've never, with the jobs I've had since then, really had to deal with that. But a lot of people have had to deal with it. There's sort of a presumption that you'll go along with the new critical social justice ideology. It's critical social justice theory, and that you don't even have to, and there's zero tolerance for debating it, because if you belong to an oppressor group, you automatically owe something back to other people, and you don't question it. That was particularly true of anti-racism, like in 2020, when after the George Floyd incidents and everything, when Robin DiAngelo's book came out. Of course, we've recently had Matt Walsh's movie, Am I Racist? Which is very interesting, to say the least. The left has been basically creating new marginalized groups, but particularly among minors, with respect to the gender identity and trans issue, or non-binary issues and so forth. So that's very, very concerned. Gender ideology, of course, can turn homophobic if it blows up, and if a lot of kids are actually coerced into medicalization, and the medicalization itself is very controversial medically. It probably is not sound. That I'm not getting into that detail here, but we've heard a lot about that recently. But it can sort of it does seem like the old gay community was gradually taken over by a more radical idea, including trans and then queer, which is like Carlin Borisenko has been showing on her channel on YouTube. Seems to have a lot of ties to Marxism. I also think gender ideology may partly have something to do with lookism, in the way even people, particularly in the male gay community, find partners and expect to build relationships. They want this upward affiliation with people that are superior, and not everybody, but logically within either sex, not everyone can comply with that. And then kids have been exposed to content online for years, even with search engines before there was social media. And then we had the smartphones. And then there's the medical opportunism came in and gradually in the 2010s. And then after maybe 2017 or 2018, it started increasing. And we really started hearing about it a lot as we came out of the pandemic in 2021. Um, and yeah, there's some concern about the possibility of actual communist revolution in some people. Let me talk about my current situation. I do have an inheritance. I've been dependent on it since I retired, largely speaking, and since 2011. Most of it actually belongs to the beneficiaries. About 2/3 of it, I can't distribute it all to myself. Just there's some things I can use it for medical and housing, but there's some things can't use it for. I have to own. There are rules about what I can distribute to myself. Um, but it does mean I can't really be involved in asking people for money for causes myself. If I have this kind of thing, I don't think I can. And if I set up a YouTube channel, I can't really ask for donations. I don't think I should anyway. And that would be true. That would sort of preclude using Patreon. Um, so the nature of the speech I've had over the year, the nature of the speech I've had over the years has been something that some people might interpret as competing with normal activism and distracting from it, or competing with people who actually do journalism for a living. I might be undermining their having jobs. Um, I would also, and also the issue of the promotion of the book. That's very significant. In around 2012, I don't think I put this on the chart, but yes, I did. Around 2012, I was contacted by my POD publisher to ask if I would greatly increase my effort to market the books. And at that time, the oldest book was 12 years old in POD, and the second one was 9 years old. And I thought the books were too old, but it might have been a good time to do it because Don't Ask, Don't Tell had been repealed in the late 2011s, starting with that law passed in late 2010 when my mother died. It might have been a good time to do it. Instead, I wrote another book, the third book in 2014. I wrote another book, but I didn't really push it hard to say that's this one. I didn't push real hard to sell it. So I've been prodded to spend a lot of money since 2022. The concerns over this led to my cutting back my online presence. My use of Blogger was stopped in 2022, and WordPress was shut down, and my use of labels of trademarks other than my own legal name were shut down, except for selling books. I still use Do Ask, Do Tell to actually try to sell books, but not to express my political opinions. That had to change. I still had some problems with a hacker in September of 2022, and I wound up rearranging things a little bit more. And I can't really get into that right now. But I've also spent about $100,000 on. It says 10,000 there. It's actually about 100,000. Let me just spend about $100,000 on marketing since the middle of 2022. Books that are the first one is actually went POD in 2000. Was actually the first printing was in 1997. when it sold rather well. And so I've had to spend a lot of time marketing books that I wrote a long time ago and haven't had very much time to spend doing my own writing right now. I would say I've also however, I've also gotten involved with a group called Practical Screenwriting, and I've actually the POD publisher did hire a screenplay writing project. The interest in the possibility of a film seemed to increase right around the spring of 2022 after the Supreme Court reversed itself on Roe versus Wade and seemed to threaten to on other things. Well, when the political memo leaked out, a lot of things changed, and it drew attention to me. It seems like so. I've been writing. I've also been working with a group called Practical Screenwriting, which you can look up on converting some of these. So I'm actually working with more than one more than one more than one party. Um, I've been to two pitch fests, one in New York City in late April of 2022, which was right before the Politico memo came out, and then one in Beverly Hills, California in late February of 2023. In Hollywood interest, there are signs that they seem to be interested. But I get a lot of fake offers and so forth, which is actually a sign that people know about it. So we're still trying this. It's actually difficult to write this in a story an acted script. Some of the feedback suggests that it should all be documentary from the pitch fest, but I've been working on acted versions of my story, which another time I've actually described it before. I put it up on the Do Ask Do Tell story on my on YouTube. So let's also just want to talk about the estate. I do have a grantor trust. It's irrevocable. The limits on distribution until my death. There are limits on distribution, which means that there's kind of a morbid interest in my dying because the beneficiaries don't really get very much, can only get a little bit of it under 1% a year under certain cases where there's a dependent added. I almost got involved with this in 2016 with the idea of sponsoring an asylum seeker. It didn't quite work out, but if I had done that, I probably would have been a lot more credible. That was another interesting thing. But one of the beneficiaries is whom I sort of have an obligation to because it's an irrevocable trust. It's created an issue for me essentially because of the controversy over gender identity and the political pressures surrounding it that we just described. Now, some people expect me to represent, a political point of view that is consistent with the beneficiaries and simply not express my own political, not express my own views on things with my own critical thinking, but simply join up with others and continue their activism. Some people say, that's like saying if you're a book author, you should become a book salesman and leave the movie making to other people, leave the politics to other people. You should just sell some. You should just play ball and prove you can sell. That's another idea I've run into, which has been a real problem. It was the playlist that has the Do Tell show on my YouTube channel. I would want you to look at. I have one blog left, which is on WordPress right now. There's an example. And then the POD publisher is trying to develop a website, and there still are some issues. I can go through this and show you those are the other two books. They're all three books are on this one. Um, Excerpts you can play excerpts just like you can on Amazon. We've paid for reviews. We haven't gotten any yet. The other works, um, which they're all on here, and then contacting me and media and events, and then buy the book link. Um, but the easiest way to buy it is on Amazon, and it's cheaper on it's actually cheaper with on Kindle. Yeah, it's only they're each $3.95. I think it's $3.95 a piece on Kindle. It's much cheaper than the printed copy. So that's just kind of what I wanted to talk about tonight to let you know where I am. And I do thank you for listening.